DFS DGen Nation. We are back after a really rough week one. Just really bad football, really all around. Outside of that Chargers Dolphins game that saved us, but other than that, it was a really rough week of football there. Hopefully, this week is better. Some positive news this week. Sounds like Travis Kelsey is going to be back this week, so that should be a good thing for the Chiefs offense going up against the Jaguars, which has one of the highest totals on the slate at 51 points. You also have a rematch of last year's game. I think it was also week two, where that game just went absolutely nuclear, 48-45, Seahawks and Lions. It opened at a 50-point total, but that total has been bet down to 47.5. And then you have the Bills and Raiders at 47, Ravens and Bengals at 46.5. It's just pretty high team totals. The Bills leading the way at 28. And then you have the Chiefs, Lions, 49ers, Bengals, and Chargers all above 24. So I think the slate has a lot of different directions you can go here and some pretty interesting builds. So, Maddie, how are you feeling about the slate overall?
Yeah, I actually like this slate. Like you said, there's probably 4 or 5 games that you can make a really good case for game stacking through the air, and there's a couple spots that we'll talk about from those games that were letdowns last week. So Bengals didn't really do anything, which we talked about that going into that game, and then Baltimore, Zay was really the only guy that did anything for Baltimore. So really that whole game, would be if those two teams were to do anything on offense, it would be a big bounce back. And you have the Bills against the Raiders. The Bills didn't do anything against the Jets, but the Jets are looking like they could possibly have, one of the best defenses in the NFL. So it's kind of hard to, factor in just how good or bad the Bills are going to be. But the Bills are looking like they're going to be one of the more popular stacks. Josh Allen's is coming in as a highest owned QB from what I see on early projections. So that's definitely something we need to factor in. And you got the Chiefs and the Jags, who look like two of the new powerhouses. New for the Jags, but two of the powerhouses in the AFC in terms of offensive production. Neither team really has a good defense to write write home about. So there's definitely some good spots. And then, that Seattle Detroit game, which I'm expecting not really any defense to be played. I mean, the Rams pretty much were able to score at will, and the Rams, without Cooper Kupp, don't really have that good of an offense. I mean, they're solid. Anything that's led by a healthy Matt Stafford is going to be decent, especially when Seattle doesn't blitz a ton, and so it can kind of mask the offensive line issues that the Rams do have. When Seattle just drops back in coverage. But I mean, if you do that against Jared Goff, he's another guy that can just start to pick you apart. He's a guy that tends to struggle under pressure a little bit, and as you back off, and Seahawks just like to play zone. They like to sit back and rush 4, and it's just pretty much what they do. And we saw, like you said, last year that game was 48-45. So, what's interesting is Seattle's offense didn't really look great last week. So it's another spot where we had a letdown in week 1, and it would be a big bounce back for, what's supposed to be a talented offense with high production this year. I mean, you've got freaking Metcalf and Lockett and JSN, and Kenneth Walker is solid at the running back position, and Geno had a monster year last year. So yeah, I really like that Seattle Detroit game, and I'm not sure why the total's a little lower on that game than the rest. Maybe it's a pace of play issue versus the others, but I just don't really see any defense being played there. So that's those are really the games that stand out to me.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just go ahead and get into it. So let's start at the quarterback position, and leading things off, you do have Patrick Mahomes and then Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, and Justin Herbert are all 7K above. And in the 6K range, you have Burrow, Lawrence, Dak Prescott, Anthony Richardson, Jared Goff, and then Daniel Jones leading the way. So is this going to be another week that you're going to want to pay down at quarterback, or are you going to want to kind of live more up in this upper range?
So if Kelsey plays and the Chiefs ownership stays where it's at, I'm playing Mahomes and Kelsey together. They're currently both projecting for like 7%. And anytime I can get them in the highest total game of the week, and I know they're very expensive, and they're going to cost you a lot, but it's really hard to not play Kansas City guys when they're, not popular. So, I personally like targeting Kansas City on the road. because their defense tends to not play as well. So Mahomes actually, if you look at his home road splits historically, Mahomes has always had to throw for 350 yards, 4 touchdowns when he's playing on the road, and that's because the defense doesn't get Arrowhead to help them. So yeah, I really like Mahomes. If I'm paying up, I definitely would play Mahomes instead of Josh Allen, and Josh Allen's going to be, like I said, the highest owned quarterback on the slate. So yeah, if paying up, I like Mahomes. Otherwise, I'm not playing Lamar. So what concerns me with the Ravens, and not necessarily concerns me with the Ravens, more so concerns me with playing Lamar in DFS, is if they're going to go to this air raid style offense, it's Lamar is going to have more pass attempts, and it's not as many designed rushes for him. So yeah, he's still going to carry the ball. He carried the ball 6 times last week, but I mean, when you pay 7,700 for Lamar, you want 100 yards rushing, right? Not 6 for 30. You want the Jalen Hurts or the Justin Fields of last year, and you want that kind of production when you pay that much for him, because Lamar's not generally not going to throw for the 300-yard bonus and 4 touchdowns. So when he does, it's really an outlier. So I'm probably off Lamar. I get the allure to playing him, but if paying up that high, I'll just pay the 600 more for Mahomes. And Mahomes has rushing upside as well. So I do like that. And I have interest in Burrow a little bit. He's under 7K, and he had 7 games last year where he eclipsed the 25 DK point mark. So the ceiling's definitely there. I just worry about how healthy he is, because, he had that calf issue pop up in training camp, spring and preseason. And then, came back to practice a week or two before the first game, and he looked awful. That was his career low in passing yards. The Bengals didn't score hardly any points. That game was just rough all the way around. And I know Cleveland's defense is supposed to be pretty good, but I mean, Baltimore's front seven isn't a slouch. And I know that I'm not sure if Marlon Humphrey's going to miss or not. I know he missed last week, but they'll be without Marcus Williams as well, their safety. So there's definitely some injuries there to pay attention to for Baltimore secondary, but I think Burrow's interesting. I'm not sure I'm going to end up there, because you have Goff at 6,200 and Geno at 5,900. That's really interesting if you want to stack up Detroit and Seattle. And then also, if you want miniature Jalen Hurts under Jalen Hurts' former offensive coordinator from last year, Anthony Richardson looked pretty solid in week 1. And now gets to face Houston, who gave up, solid production to Lamar through the air last week. And so I think Richardson is interesting again. So I'm going to probably end up on one of Mahomes, Richardson, Goff, or Geno Smith. And that's where my air attacks are going to start.
Right. So yeah, for me, I think Justin Herbert is where I'm going to have a lot of interest going up against Tennessee. Tennessee's run defense is still very, very good, but their pass defense is atrocious. They just give up 300 plus passing yards to Derek Carr in this game, and right now it's possible that Austin Eckler does not play, which I think you would just see them go full on, just embrace the pass. Use Justin Herbert in that way, and so I think him, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Gerald Everett, I think would all be in play. And not having Austin Eckler probably gives some of them a boost as well, because that's just targets. Because Josh McKelley's not going to be out here getting 8 or 9 targets that like something like Austin Eckler could get. So I think Justin Herbert is an elite play this week, coming off a week where he didn't really perform the way people thought he would against the Dolphins. That was a lot to do because of they just ran the football down their throat, and they were a little bit more. They were a little more even and balanced in terms of their run to pass splits. But I really love Justin Herbert here in a bounce back spot against Tennessee. And then, I think on the other side of this Chiefs game, if you want to go Jacksonville, the Chiefs will be getting Chris Jones back. I don't expect him to play a full workload or anything like that. I think he'll probably be eased back in, considering he missed all of training camp, preseason, everything from his holdout. But Chris Jones should be back here. The defense is relatively healthy, and they actually played pretty well last week. But I just think Trevor Lawrence, I think he's a very easy stack with Calvin Ridley, who is still too cheap for the massive target share that he saw last week. Zay Jones makes a lot of sense too, because basically, they're not playing a ton of 3 wide receiver sets right now. and that's killing Christian Kirk because Christian Kirk is not playing outside of that. And so if that trend continues, I don't know if that was just last week and maybe they're going to, go to a far more 3 wide receiver sets playing the Chiefs. But so I do think it makes for a pretty easy stack there with Trevor Lawrence if you want to go on the other side of that game. But I 100% agree. If Patrick Mahomes is not going to be owned and he's going to be sub 10%, it is really hard not to have some interest, obviously, in Patrick Mahomes here in this matchup. And then how do you feel about Brock Purdy? Like, he's only 5,700. The Rams, I know they played really well last week, but I will also say that I think that some of that's a little fluky, and I'm still not convinced that the Rams defense is any good, especially their secondary. I think Brock Purdy is kind of interesting if you really want to pay down. You can pair him with obviously his elite pass catchers in Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel or George Kittle, but he's only 5,700 again in this matchup against the Rams. So I do kind of have some interest if I want to pay down. And then obviously the other one would be Jordan Love. Again, I am still on the Jordan Love bandwagon here after a really strong performance last week on the road in the Dome there at Atlanta playing the Falcons.
Purdy, I looked into Purdy. Purdy's interesting. He's just because he's cheap, but I just don't know what his ceiling is because he hasn't really flashed a ceiling. Like even his big games are like 20 DK points, and I mean that's fine. But like if Mahomes goes out and gets me 35, you're gonna have to have that, or Gino or Golf can start approaching 30, and they're not that much more expensive. I think we're going to see a QB this week go for a 30 plus. We didn't see it last week, but I think we're going to see it this week. So I don't think Purdy can get me there, and I think I'm going to side with one of the guys who can. But I don't hate the call. I think that game is very interesting, and I definitely have interest in pieces of it. I just don't know that I'd full stack it.
Yeah. Other than that, I think in terms of the other quarterback options here, like there's not a whole lot that stands out to me past that. I think I'm going to attack the Lions and the Seahawks game. I'm definitely going to play a ton of this Chiefs Jaguars game, and then I'm also going to go with this Chargers offense. I think is where I'm going to be coming in at.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. I don't hate the Jordan Love call either. He looks pretty good last week and all preseason, honestly.
Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and just move over to running backs. I don't think we need to spend a lot more time on the quarterback position here. So at running back, you have Christian McCaffrey, who's 8,900. And then you have Austin Eckler, who also did not practice today. I would feel pretty confident to say he's not going to play this week at $8,700, considering the fact that, he has not got enough practice yet. But obviously tomorrow is also a big day. But yeah, then you have Saquon, Bijan Robinson, Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne, Aaron Jones, who is also very questionable, who was a non-participant today, which is kind of surprising because on Monday they had said that Aaron Jones said that he was fine, but also on the flip side of that, the Packers have one of the most just really safe medical staffs. Like they are very safe with their players. They do not risk anything, so it wouldn't shock me if he were to miss. So that's Joe Mixon, Jahmyr Gibbs, James Conner, James Cook, and Dalvin Cook in the 6K above range here at the running back position. What are you looking at here?
Well, so I think probably the biggest question of the week is if Eckler sits, are you playing Josh Kelly?
No. And the reason why is because the Tennessee Titans run defense is elite. Like they are very, very, very good.
I mean, we just had the same spot with Jamal Williams last week, right? Like a guy that, I mean, Kelly can be used in the pass game, but he's definitely not, he's not Christian McCaffrey. So like I would expect if he's the only guy out there, I would expect him to, get 5 targets. But I mean, is that going to outweigh, like, is his 5 catches or 4 catches for 30 or 40 yards? Is that going to help boost his 40 yards rushing that he gets with no touchdowns? Like you're looking at, 10 points there, without any touchdowns. And I guess he could fall into one, and then all of a sudden you're at 16. But I'd really venture to say that he's not going to score twice on the ground, and he's not going to go for the 100-yard bonus. So I'm kind of with you. I think if Eckler sits, his ownership's going to be kind of too high to where I don't really want to play him. But going back to the top, I think it's definitely McCaffrey and Barkley. You can absolutely play both of those guys. I think the Giants are in for a big bounce back spot, and that's another team that looked really bad in week 1, but they played Dallas, so it's arguably the best defense in the NFL. Daniel Jones was running for his life. That's not going to be the case against Arizona. And Saquon is pretty much their engine. He's was heavily utilized in game 1 and just wasn't efficient because of the matchup. But I expect that to change here. So I definitely like him. I think Derrick Henry is interesting, and I know Spears was getting a ton of run in week 1 as well. But I mean, Henry against the Chargers. I mean, we saw what Mostert did with very little. Mostert wasn't handed the ball as much as Derrick Henry could be handed the ball here. Like Henry could run the ball 25 times and he could easily go for 150 and 2 touchdowns. So he definitely has a ceiling here, and he's only 7,400. I mean, Henry was above 8K most of last year. So I think that, he's got a little bit of a price decrease here on him. And like I said, it's a really good matchup against the Chargers at home. West to east trip for the Chargers coming east to Tennessee. So I definitely think Henry is interesting. I don't think anybody's going to play him because of the snap shares from week 1. And then also up there in 7K range, Josh Jacobs is another guy who was on the field for 90% of snaps in week 1 and now is facing Buffalo, who we just saw Breece Hall, like an 80% Breece Hall, absolutely destroyed them. So if that was 100% Breece Hall, he would have housed 2 of those open field runs that he had. You could tell he started to slow down, and he looked like he definitely didn't look like he was 100%, but you could see getting through the line that the burst is there, but it's the top end speed for him that still seems like it's trying to recover. So or I guess the ability to hold that top end speed, because he was still clocked at a high mile per hour. But I do think Josh Jacobs is a good play this week as well. He is on the road, but again, he's not going to come off the field. So then from there, it's down to like the 6K range. I like James Cook in the same game, the other side. Him against Las Vegas. He's another guy that, is getting a good chunk of the snaps. He saw a decent amount of targets. He had 6 targets last week and 12 rush attempts. Again, good matchup against Vegas. So I really like him. AJ Dillon is another one. Only if Aaron Jones is out. That's interesting. He'd be up against Atlanta. I don't think he'd be a smash, like just a lock if Jones were to miss. Just because he doesn't really have the explosiveness that Aaron Jones has. So even if he's gonna see 4 to 6 targets, I mean, he still needs to get you in the end zone twice, which for him is absolutely doable. But we've seen games before where Aaron Jones misses and AJ Dillon only puts up like 12 points. So again, he's not a lock button, but he's definitely in consideration if Aaron Jones is out. And then another guy that seemed to play a ton in week 1 was Kenneth Walker. So if you're not playing Geno Smith, Kenneth Walker is definitely a guy that you should have consideration of playing this week, because he was involved in the pass game as well. He had 5 targets last week and 12 carries, and Charbonnet barely played, and DJ Dallas barely played. So that was Kenneth Walker's show, if you will. So I don't know. I guess I will say Rachaad White is definitely in play against Chicago, just from how bad Chicago is. You can definitely play Rachaad White, who is another guy that seems to be getting all the work and just isn't coming off the field much. So I don't have a ton of confidence, in thinking that some of these guys are going to absolutely smash outside of the guys that are high priced. So like these mid-range guys. But there's definitely, I think 1 or 2 of them could end up with a really good game. It's just a matter of figuring out which ones those are going to be, which is the challenge.
Yeah. So for me, when I look at this, I think, I 100% agree. I don't really need to talk about, McCaffrey or Barkley. Obviously, Barkley getting the Cardinals is a dream spot, especially for a bounce back spot. But I think when you really look at this, I think I totally agree with you on James Cook. James Cook handled 65% of the snaps and had a 15% target share last week. It just didn't really work out. It was obviously a really, really tough matchup against the Jets. I think he could easily bounce back in a big way this week at 6,100. And then Travis Etienne, I really love him as well. He kind of put together a really strong performance last week as well. He handled 65% of running back carries and had a
Yep.
15% target share as well last week. The Chiefs really do struggle to stop the run, but the really positive sign was seeing him used so much in the passing game. That's not something he was necessarily done so much of last year. So if he can continue this, like this could be a smash price for Travis Etienne
For
and
sure.
a spot here for a game that you want to get if you want to get a little bit different on a game that has a really high total. Travis Etienne is definitely one way I think you can go at his price at $6,900. I also think Jameer Gibbs at $6,300. He is the pass catching back, and I know he didn't really get as much work as we thought he would compared to David Montgomery, but Dan Campbell did come out and say that was by design and they plan on getting him more and more involved as the game goes by, or as the season goes by. Um, so I do think in a game like this, he could be used, but I don't know if maybe that price a little bit too exorbitant to play him right now. But I will say for the running backs that are sub 6K, I think Kenneth Walker 100% is in play. I know you kind of mentioned him, but Kenneth Walker last week handled 63% of the snaps. He also had 5 targets, and you compare that to Zach Charbonnet, who only played 24% of the snaps last week. It only had 3 touches. So this is clearly Kenneth Walker's backfield here in this offense, and especially if he's going to be seeing a decent target share from this offense, I definitely think this is something that we could be looking at here, and especially his price. I mean, $5,800 feels incredibly too cheap. He is a home run hitting running back, somebody that could bust off a 60-yard touchdown run at any moment. So Kenneth Walker at $5,800 is really hard to ignore. And then Damian Pierce at $5,600. I know he didn't do a whole lot last week, but this is a much, much better matchup this week against the Indianapolis Colts. They really struggled last week to stop the run. And so this week, I think nothing's going to change. Even going back to last season, they were top 10 in DK points allowed to the position. They were top 10 and rushing yards allowed, touchdowns allowed. So this is a smash spot for Damian Pierce. And so the total's right there for them as well in terms of I think it's they are a slight favorite in this game as well. So I just think Damian Pierce is incredibly too cheap at the price of $5,600. Like if I'm going to pay down at running back, I think he's definitely somebody you can look at. What worries me about Rachaad White is the dude has never been efficient. Like he wasn't last week. But what the positive is, if you're wanting to follow the touches, he played almost 80% of and handled almost 80% of the backfield touches in the last week. So I think his job is still very secure in this offense, and it is a good matchup against the Bears. And the price is hard to really deny at $5,500.
Yep. I'm good with all that.
So yeah. So I think that's really where I'm coming in at this week. I'm definitely going to try to fit in some of the high price running backs, but I definitely want to focus in on players like James Cook, like Travis Etienne, and then Kenneth Walker and Damian Pierce are going to be kind of in my core group of guys that I really want to play. So
yeah, I like that. I like that grouping there. I think it's, dude. Honestly, I think it's a season where like paying like mid range to down at running back and tight end is going to be the way to go, and paying up for wide receiver. Because if there's going to be lower scoring games, it's going to be the good wide receivers that are getting the production. Because you generally only get the high scoring value receivers when it's a shootout. Like you rarely see only the value guys go off when it's a low scoring game. Like it's usually the studs that get their production no matter what, and then the cheap guys get their value when the games go. When there's 5 touchdowns going around, not just 1 or 2. So, with that, if these games are going to continue to be lower scoring across the board every week, I think it definitely makes sense to play as cheap of a running back as you feel comfortable playing, and tight end as well, and then just getting all the volume on through the passing games at wide receiver. So,
is there any other running backs you want to talk about? Or you want to jump over to wide receiver?
I'm good to jump.
All right. So when we look at this week, like one thing that stood out to me is just kind of the pricing for wide receivers. It feels like some of these guys should be a little bit more expensive than what they are. Like getting Jamar Chase at $7,900 feels a little criminal to me this week. But Stephon Diggs leads the way at only $8K. Jamar Chase, like I said, and then you have Amon-Ra St. Brown at $7,800, CeeDee Lamb at $77, Devontae at $76, Garrett Wilson at $7,500, but Calvin Ridley, my goodness, $7,200. He definitely feels like he should be more expensive than what he is, especially coming off the performance he just did. And then Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, DeAndre Hopkins, Jerry Jeudy, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, Tyler Lockett, and Chris Godwin wrap up the 6K and above range. I will say for me personally, I'm going to do whatever I can to get as much Amon-Ra St. Brown in this game at $7,800. I think he's going to torch that secondary. Last year, there was a big focus for them. If you remember, TJ Hawkinson had the monster game for them and really just kind of ate up the middle of the field there in that game. Had 2 touchdowns. They get like 180 receiving yards or something like that in that game. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to play a very similar role here within this offense. So at $7,800, he's not too expensive to make him prohibitive to play some of the other guys. And then Calvin Ridley, we already talked about, had like a 35% target share last week. Clearly the number one wide receiver within this offense. $7,200 is just too cheap. And then Keenan Allen at $7,100 and DK Metcalf. I really like DK Metcalf in this spot as well. Those are the dudes that, especially, I think you can easily play Tyler Lockett if you want to. I know he didn't do anything last week, but he is more of a boomer bust type option here within this offense. But $6,100 is also, I think, a very good play. So those are kind of from the high price guys. I definitely want to get on my teams.
I am on the same exact guys as you. And I will say, if you like Metcalf and Lockett, please force yourself to play them because they are currently projected for under 3%. So nobody's playing the Seattle pass game.
That makes zero sense to me.
Because
why no one would want to pay them?
Well, so Diggs is 8K, Chase is 7.9, Amon-Ra is 7.8, Adams is 7.6, and Ridley's 7.2. All of those guys are between 15 to 20% owned. So just by default, it's everybody that's in like the 6 to 7K range is coming in with no ownership whatsoever. Literally from Godwin to Metcalf, that group is all single digits.
Well, yeah.
So if you like Seattle, all I'm saying is if you like Seattle, make sure you have a team or 2 or 3 or however many. Definitely give yourself some good exposure if you like them, because there's not going to be anybody that plays that pass game. Which that doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever.
Yeah. As far as the guys below 6K range, who are you looking at there?
Josh Reynolds, 3,700 is my flag plant play of the week. He, in the games last year and then week 1 this year, he's averaging, it's over 90 yards a game, and I think it's like 9 targets a game in the games where Chark was out and Jameson Williams was out last year. And then obviously week 1, neither of those guys played. Well, Chark is no longer on the team, but so he is the absolute number 2 receiving option there for Detroit. And he's 3,700 playing Seattle. Sign me up. Okay, in Seattle, we just saw both Tutu and Puka go for over 100 yards against them. So even if you're playing Amon-Ra, you absolutely can play Reynolds with him as well and double stack that. So Josh Reynolds is my favorite value guy. As far as like just below 6K, we talked about the San Francisco guys, both Ayuk and Debo. You absolutely can play them. I think Debo is going to be a little chalky just because he's 5'6". Mike Williams absolutely in play for all the reasons you mentioned, liking the Chargers. It's a pass funnel, and if there's no Eckler, it's more targets for what should be the pass catchers there. And Mike Williams would be one of them. He's only 5,700. DJ Moore at 5,500 is someone you have to at least consider a little bit. I mean, the Bears looked awful in week 1, but I mean, he is their number 1 guy. Zay Flowers at 5K. If Mark Andrews is out, I definitely will play Zay Flowers. If Andrews is back, I feel like Zay is going to get too much ownership for a role that we just don't know what it's going to look like with Andrews on the field. So I'll be a little more hesitant to click him at 5K if Andrews plays. But if Andrews is out again, I absolutely love clicking Zay Flowers again there at 5K. In the Rams guys too. I mean, all the talk of the town this week is to play Puka or not to play Puka in week 2. And I mean, his role is just going to be it's the Cooper Cup role, right? So he's running all a lot of similar routes and being utilized in the formation in similar ways. Um, he's got similar skill sets. He's decent sized body, good possession receiver. Just a lot of traits that are successful with Matthew Stafford. So he's only 4,900. So I definitely have interest there. He did pop up with a oblique injury today, and he didn't practice. So it's definitely something to monitor. But you can absolutely play Tutu and even Van Jefferson are in play, I think, from the Rams um, as well. The San Francisco secondary is not great. It's just their front seven gets a good chunk of pass rush on them. So in a spot where Seattle didn't really apply pressure to Stafford last week, maybe San Fran gets to the quarterback a lot more often, and it causes disruptions to that Rams pass game. So at that point, maybe we shouldn't even be talking about playing Rams if that's going to be the case, because Stafford's going to be peeling himself off the turf all day long. So it's definitely something to consider playing them because it's one of the higher total games of the week. But I don't think any of the Rams are slam dunks after their week one performance. And another guy in that upper four range is Nico Collins at 4,800. He is the alpha in that offense. And CJ Stroud, I think, looked actually decent in week one against Baltimore. So a much, much, much easier matchup against the non-existent secondary in Indy. I absolutely could see Nico going for over 100 yards and a touchdown here. So I really like him at 4,800 as well.
Something we're going to have to monitor is Puka Nacua, I mean. He actually is questionable with a oblique injury. He did not even practice today. So that is something we're going to have to monitor with that situation that kind of popped up out of nowhere. But if he's not able to play this week, I pretty much probably just take all the wide receivers off. Like I wouldn't want to play anybody. It's not really necessarily a great matchup either. The 49ers defense is really good. Their secondary can be had, but that is something that I would want to monitor here because I do think a lot of people are going to want to play him at $4,900. 100% agree with you on Nico Collins. He was something that I was going to talk about, but I totally agree. He saw 11 targets last week. He is unquestionably the number one wide receiver within this offense. I think some other options you could take a look at here would be guys like not necessarily players that I'm looking to like, but I think as one-offs type situations here. One, Christian Watson also did not practice again today, so I would say it's definitely trending in a direction that he's probably not going to play again this week, which makes sense because why risk it? So I think Romeo Dobbs comes back into play. He's only $4,800, and then Jaden Reed is also in play at his price as well. So I think if you're wanting to get a little bit different, Jaden Reed's only $3,400. So if you're wanting a cheaper option, I think that is one way you could go here. As even if it's just not in terms of a stack, which is kind of some one-offs, those would be the guys that I would be looking at. I would love to say Drake London at 5K, but I cannot play anybody from those for them because Arthur Smith is stuck in the 90s of how you should run a football team. When you have, when you have, two really strong playmakers, the best option should always be just to not utilize them at all and just
It
make them
doesn't
out
make
there
any
to run
sense.
around. Yeah, and I thought it was funny that he said today that, or it might have been yesterday that Kyle Pitts and Drake London, they don't care about if they get targets or not. They just care about wins. And I'm like, oh, I bet you they won't care whenever their next contract comes up.
Exactly.
They've done nothing. I'm sure they'll be totally cool with, hey man, look at those wins we got.
You know who doesn't care is Arthur Smith because then he doesn't have to pay them money. That's who doesn't care.
Well, I'm fully confident he won't be around by then. I don't think he's going to be right. He's not a good coach, but who knows? Some guys get to hang on a little bit longer than they should. But that's kind of where I sit with this. Like, I think this lower tier of wide receiver, I'm not as excited about. I think there's certainly some options here down here. I don't know if I mentioned it, but Mike Williams, 100%. I know I talked about him when I talked about Herbert, but $5,700. They've really struggled to stop the deep ball as well, like we saw last week with Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave just torching them deep all day, and that's Mike Williams' role in this offense. So I think if I had to make a decision between him and Keenan Allen, I actually think Mike Williams. This feels like a Mike Williams type game here. At $5,700, that's just the way they generally use him. And so $5,700, Mike Williams is still too cheap. I mean, the guy can easily put up 30 fantasy points here in this matchup against the Titans here. So I do like that quite a bit. And then past that, like some of the guys we talked about is like secondary options, part of a stack, like a Zay Jones type. I do think Christian Kirk is going to go completely underlooked, and it's possible that he bounces back in a big way. He's only $5,100 that you could take a look at. But other than that, like I'm not really all excited about playing a lot of these other dudes that are down
Yeah, it's Reynolds down there for me, and that's it. Other than that, Nico Collins will probably be the lowest receiver I play at 4.8.
Yeah, there's just not a lot to be excited about.
You could so because we've seen the wide receiver 3 for Buffalo spike in the past, like think back to the random Isaiah McKenzie days. And even, Shakir had a solid game when McKenzie was out, I think with a concussion last year. Deontay Hardy is definitely their wide receiver 3, behind Gabe and Diggs. And I mean, even Gabe Davis is somebody that you can play this week in tournaments because it's all usually all or nothing with him. But I mean, those two guys are good exposure to the highest team total of the week for cheap. And it's not Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, at mega ownership. So I think those guys but I would only consider them, if I was running like 20 teams out. I definitely wouldn't play Hardy on a freaking single entry or 3 max. Those are definitely more for large field, larger portfolio players, not for somebody like me, but it's definitely something to consider. Because again, we've seen those random spike weeks from like the Isaiah McKenzie's in Buffalo before. So
I think if you want to, in terms of the Chiefs wide receivers, if you want to sprinkle in a little bit of like a Sky Moore or even a Kadarius Toney, I know nobody's going to want to play Kadarius Toney because how bad he was, but I think he bounces back. He's not that bad of a wide receiver. Like
yeah,
plays,
for sure.
this isn't something we've seen from him in the past where he just drops all these football. Like it's so like guys like this could end up being, like Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore. Both of them are super cheap. Include them in the stack of with Patrick Mahomes because to me it's Travis Kelce, and then I think from there you just kind of sprinkle some of these guys in.
And the Toney thing too, like the whole argument against him usually is he only plays like 35-40% of the snaps, but when he's on the field, like he is the first read. So like even though he's only playing 35% of snaps, he's still going to come away with 6-7 targets generally. So 4,600 with 6 or 7 targets with a guy as explosive as Toney is, you attached to Patrick Mahomes, like you definitely have to have interest in that.
For sure. So
I would be confident in saying I have more confidence in Toney than I do Sky Moore in terms of role.
Yes, absolutely. That's no doubt. So
I like that call, especially if I'm going to play Mahomes and Kelce, and like I say, like, oh, they're coming in at 7% owned. Like, why not just attach Toney to it also?
Yeah, I totally agree. So let's go ahead and move over to the tight end position. And like I said, Travis Kelce is $7,600. I do expect if he does play that he's probably going to be limited. I don't think he's going to go out there and play like his normal 70-75% of the snaps. I think regardless of that, even if he is on a snap count, he is still going to see a lot of targets when he is on the field. And then Mark Andrews, he's $6,300 today. He got in a limited practice, same as Kelce. And then Darren Waller, he's already said that he's playing even though he was limited today. He's $5,500. Then you have Kittle, Ingram, Tyler Higbee, Komet, and Kyle Pitts, Gerald Everett, and Dalton Schultz that wrap up the 4K and above range. To me, I'm going to try to, I think we talk about this a lot in terms of a stack. Like, you always want to try to include the tight end position if you can into that stack, because especially like a Mahomes, as we've seen a lot of other guys that kind of bring their tight end with them, and so I think they're always a logical choice to include into a stack. But obviously, we don't need to talk about some of these top guys. I do think Sam Laporta at $3,900, I'm going to have a lot of. I played him last week in Showdown quite a bit, and I'm not shying away. This is a rookie tight end, super athletic guy. He saw 5 targets in that game last week against the Chiefs. So I think Sam Laporta at $3,900 is just it makes too much sense. And then guys like Jake Ferguson, he's $3,300. He saw 7 targets last week for the Cowboys. And listen, the Cowboys did not have to throw the ball at all in that game because they just absolutely steamrolled the Giants. So I do think Jake Ferguson at $3,300. Luke Musgrave, I think, is if you're wanting to stack up Jordan Love, if you want to pay down. $3,200, especially with some of the injury concerns that team has. He very well could have a pretty solid target share. I think Adam Troutman, Greg Dulcich, excuse me, is going to miss multiple weeks with an injury, and so Adam Troutman instantly becomes the more of a receiving threat. He saw 5 targets last week as well with this Broncos offense, but this is more of a price play because he's only $3,000. And so if you're wanting to pay down at tight end, I think Adam Troutman at only $3K is another place you can look.
So what's interesting to me is all those guys you just named off, none of them are in the top 5% of ownership except for Kelsey, and he's sub 10. The 2 chalk guys are 2 you would never expect. It's Luke Musgrave and Chig Okonkwo are the chalk tight end. Let that sink in. Luke Musgrave and Chig Okonkwo. Chig, who got 2 targets and 0 points last week, and Musgrave actually has a decent role, and Atlanta's definitely a good matchup. But, rookie tight end in his second game ever, is the chalk at tight end. I don't hate Musgrave. I definitely would play him if I was playing cash, but I mean, it's hard to justify. Like I said, a guy playing his second ever NFL game being the highest owned tight end on this slate with actual decent amount of options. Like you mentioned Jake Ferguson, right? Like with Brandon Cooks popping up and missing practices now, and if let's say Sauce is on Lamb, and Lamb doesn't have as big of a game as he should, it pretty much leaves Gallup and Ferguson there in the pass game. And we know Dak loves the tight end, so Ferguson's definitely in play. Nobody's going to click that because they see New York Jets. I already talked about Kelsey as being a good play. I don't mind the Troutman call with Dulcich being out. Even Kincaid had a good role for Buffalo. He didn't really get down the field much, but he was definitely still involved and played a ton of snaps. So I think as the season goes on, he's going to definitely have bigger involvement. Laporta, the guy you mentioned that you like a lot, is checking in under 5% in that game, that Seattle-Detroit game that we like a lot. So really, I think I'm going to end up on Seattle-Detroit because it seems like Amon-Ra is the only chalky piece from that game. Nobody's playing either quarterback. Amon-Ra's chalky. Nobody's playing Josh Reynolds. Nobody's playing Laporta. Nobody's playing DK. Nobody's playing Lockett. So Seattle-Detroit is really starting to catch my eye as a game that nobody wants to play. So I really like the Laporta call. Andrews, if he plays, is definitely somebody you could always play, especially if you wanted to stack, Burrow or Lamar in that game. Andrews and Jamar Chase make a great skinny stack there. So yeah, I mean, even George Kittle. I know you mentioned Brock Purdy. George Kittle going up against the Rams, which the Rams historically, George Kittle, has historically had a decent amount of success against them. And Kittle caught 7 touchdowns in 4 games with Purdy last year to close out the year. So he definitely has a 25-point ceiling if he were to get in the end zone twice. It's definitely possible. So I wouldn't sleep on Kittle either. He's only 5.3. So I think he's interesting as well.
Yeah, let's go ahead and jump over to the defense, which is always our favorite place to talk about, this week. So last week, I actually played a lot of the Cardinals, just as kind of because I knew that the Commanders were going to be the chalkiest defense. So
I played the Texans, min-price Texans against Baltimore is what I ended up with.
Yeah, well, I think the Cardinals scored almost 20 DK points. So
yeah.
it paid off nicely, and they were like 2% rostered. And then last week, honestly, you could go back to that if you wanted to. The Cardinals, I mean, They played pretty their defense wasn't the problem last week for sure, but I do think I expect the Giants to bounce back, but that offensive line for the Giants still is a problem, and they were just getting destroyed all night. Like Brian Dable's a dick for leaving for leaving Daniel Jones out there with like 7
Yeah.
minutes
No,
left in the
I
fourth
agree.
quarter. All the starters were pulled, and he is still out there just taking shots by the Cowboys defense just over and over again. I was like, I don't know if I've ever seen something like that before. That was wild to me that they had just left him out there. But overall, like, I mean, if you want to play even to go to the Raiders, I think you can do that. I know it's against the Bills, but Josh Allen continues to turn the ball over at an extremely high rate. Another 4 turnovers this past weekend. The Raiders can get to the football or can get to the quarterback. Excuse me. So I do think if you want to pay all the way down for the Raiders, like it's kind of what we're looking for. Like to me, defense is always just try to fit in whoever you can fit in. Once you build your roster.
Yeah, I'm good with paying all the way down for the Raiders. Usually that's what I do is I'll start my build just by plugging in the cheapest defense and then trying to fit whatever I can fit from there. And then if I have, $200, $300, $400 left over once I make the team that I like, then I'll upgrade my defense from there. So I'm good with the Raiders. I'm good with Tennessee at 200 above them at 2,400. At home against the Chargers, we already mentioned, likely without Eckler, they're going to throw the ball a ton. Good things happen on defense when the opposing team throws the ball a lot. So there's definitely opportunity there for Tennessee to put up a big number. And then also, I wouldn't steer too far away from the Jets either. I know they're on the road, 2,700 at Dallas. Doesn't really scare me. The Dallas offense didn't really look great, in my opinion, in week one. So I kind of like the Jets. They put a hurting on the Bills, who are supposed to be a pretty good offense, and the Bills now have the highest team total this week. So that should just tell you how good that Jets defense is. And again, the only reason the Cowboys scored 40 points was because how good their defense was. They scored multiple defense and special teams touchdowns, and I mean Dak only threw for like 140 yards because he really only had 2, but again, even when he was, trying to get the ball down the field, they had a ton of drops, and Zach Martin also popped up on the injury report with, I think it was a groin. I can't remember what exactly it was, but that was today as well. So that's something to monitor because those midweek downgrades are usually never a good sign. So definitely want to keep an eye on that. And if honestly, if Zach Martin were to miss, I mean, I'm just going to click the Jets anyways. So those are the 3 defenses I like.
100% on the Jets. I think the Jets is a really sharp call. I mean, their defense is elite. After losing Aaron Rodgers the way they did so early in that game, that game should have been a blowout, and it wasn't. That defense can certainly wreak havoc, and they can certainly get to the quarterback. Their secondary is still really strong. So, yes, and we know Dak is a quarterback that can definitely turn the football over at times and make bad decisions. And so that's all you really need, right? You pick up some sacks, you cause a forced fumble, take one to the house, and then you're set, especially at $2,700. So I completely agree with you on that call. Other than that, like I never really have interest of ever paying up for a defense. I just don't think you really need to do it. So I mean, if you wanted to, I guess if you want to go up to like the Packers at 3K with Desmond Ritter, but they just don't throw the ball enough to really turn the football over. So they would have to build a pretty significant lead and force them to kind of throw the football for that to really, I think, pay off.
If you're gonna pay up, you just have to play Dallas against Zach Wilson. I mean, that's your pay up if you're paying up. But I'm not paying 4K for a defense.
No, I mean unless you just happen to have money left over. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's go ahead and just build this lineup. We're making record time. We're not even into an hour yet, and we're making a team.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah. So
keep it rolling.
Let's go ahead and why don't you start it off?
Josh Reynolds, my flag plant play of the week.
Josh Reynolds. All right. Let's lock him in. was going to go Chiefs direction, but I'm just going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown.
All right. Well, if we're playing 2, might as well play golf with it.
And, well, we got some extra money. Let's go DK Metcalf.
All right. Do you want the full-blown game, like game goes nuclear game stack? Because we can play Kenneth Walker too.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Kenneth Walker.
I'm going to lock in Dameon Pierce at 5,600.
Okay. So it leaves 13.9 for 3 spots. Tight end flex in D, which is 4,600 per. So we can still do some spending here. Let's see. I definitely don't want to full fade Kansas City and Jacksonville. So let's try Ridley and see if we can make that work.
Okay, so we need a tight end and a defense. Let me ask you this. Oh, he's your flag plant, so I don't want to take that. Because I wouldn't mind getting like a little mini stack with the Chiefs, but there's not really any options. I'm not going to play Noah Gray. We don't have money for Travis Kelce, so I was thinking if we could play Laporta at tight end instead of Reynolds, and then we could fit in something else. But
yeah, we can do that. That's fine. We play. Oh man, I don't think we're gonna be able to fit Tony. We can fit Sky Moore, but I would definitely prefer Tony. We'd have to come off Walker probably. So what we could do, okay, so it's kind of some moving pieces here, but it definitely works. So instead of Walker, you'd have to drop to Rashad White.
oh yeah, that's really all you'd have to do.
And then instead of Reynolds, you play Tony. At tight end, you play Laporta. And at defense, you just have to play Raiders D. And 0 salary left over.
Yeah, that's what I got in. So golf, Rashad White, Dameon Pierce, Kadarius Toney, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DK Metcalf, Sam Laporta, Calvin Ridley, and the Raiders.
I'm good with it. Full-blown game stack Seattle, Detroit with a mini stack from Kansas City and Jacksonville. Works for me.
All right, we're locking that one in. That's going to be the lineup for the week. Goff, Rashad White, Pierce.
That's the Millie Maker.
Yep.
We are now $1 million richer.
Nobody's playing it. And we can just log out after that, you know. Isaac, my brother, went up against Hawkinson, Smith, and
JJ. Yikes.
Yeah, that's just look forward to next week, my man.
Yeah. That's a rough
quick
one.
season long question. Dotson or Pickens? Appreciate it. I'd probably go Pickens.
Washington's against Denver. Pittsburgh again. Pittsburgh's the night game, aren't they?
Monday night game. Yeah, one of the Monday night games.
Saints? Who's Pittsburgh play? Because they're not on the main slate.
Browns.
Browns.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably Dotson. That's a tough one. I don't really love either, but I would definitely go Dotson.
Shmoney, Blue, Kincaid or Ferg and tight end premium. Yeah, I'm gonna go Ferguson there. And I think that I don't know if you're even in here, Ronnie, but if you still are, Giants defense or Saints, I'll go Giants. They're playing the Cardinals. I mean, the Saints have a good spot too against Carolina.
Giants. for sure, Giants.
You reckon Tigers care if they clinched the division last night in PB? No. This is the 13U team that I coach. KC Tigers. I can see how you could mix that up and think that's what that's for, but no. So yeah, that's what this is. So their population. Anyways, I guess that's it. I mean, some sort of a record for us doing this in under an hour.
We said it was pretty straightforward slate.
Yeah, so there's no reason to veer off too much. So I do think it's pretty straightforward here.
Maybe Debro will join us and not big league us too badly here in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I mean maybe. But then again, whenever he is on, it is a 4-hour podcast. So
that's why you mentioned the time. That's what I thought of was if Derek was on, we would still be on running backs right now.
You know what is messed up though is that he's not even. At least he usually has a common courtesy to be in the chat or something like that. In there,
he told you he's big leaguing us.
Yeah.
One of my cats.
So, all right. Anyways, let's go ahead and get out of here. Oh, nice. I was thinking Japan baseball, right? Yeah. Nope. Just a bunch of 13-year-old kids is what it is here in Kansas City. So yeah. Anyways, we actually just got brand new uniforms. They're all black with yellow pinstripes. They are very nice. I'm a big fan of because
hopefully they don't look like the Pittsburgh Pirates pinstripe ones because those are awful.
No, they're not that bad. No.
The Pittsburgh Pirate ones are like they're like jail uniforms. They look ridiculous.
No, not at all. And then I tried to get them to be more like City Connect, kind of like the Reds, because it's the Tigers across is also black and outlined in yellow. So it kind of has like the red City Connect. That's kind of where I got the inspiration from a little bit. But I also wanted pinstripes, and then in the spring we're also gonna do another pinstripe, but it's gonna be white with black, like more traditional pinstripe. So yeah,
nice.
So looking forward to that. But anyways, nobody cares about youth baseball, but I could go on for hours about that. Anyways, hope everybody has a good weekend. Hope everybody has a good time. Be sure if you want, you can jump into our Discord. It's in all of our video descriptions. It's absolutely free to get into. And then other than that, we will see you all again here soon. And I guess, Maddie now is jumping on the Sunday show. So we go live every Sunday morning to get you guys ready for that as well. So, if you want to do that, you could also jump over there as well for season-long questions.
Yeah, I'll try to do better than I did tonight for some of my buddies that I personally know. They were hitting me with DeAndre Swift or Tyler Lockett, and unfortunately, I advised Tyler Lockett on that one. So,
I don't think anybody could have predicted that DeAndre Swift was going to go nuclear.
He got 1 carry and 2 targets last week behind Kenneth Gainwell, and then all of a sudden he's just going to get 30 carries. I don't.
You almost feel bad for like all the people that just spent a lot of money, Fab or highway priorities on Kenneth Gainwell, and that now he feels like he is cooked with as well as DeAndre Swift played.
Yeah, I think they're going to continue. I think they're going to continue to use Gainwell mainly just to kind of, keep Swift healthy throughout the year. But obviously they had to use Swift, in a full-blown role tonight. I guess they just have zero confidence in Penny because he was barely out there. It was mainly Scott was the second guy that they were using, which they've used Scott, last year too. But yeah, I was just shocked at how much usage Swift did get. Like I thought he would get, what he was getting with the Lions last year, give him like 8 to 10 carries and 5 to 7 targets. And there's his, 15, 16 opportunities. That's what I was assuming. And at that rate, Jalen Hurts is the goal line running back, and Swift wouldn't have had the 100-yard bonus. But
175 rushing yards and a touchdown.
Yeah,
which he lost 2 goal line touchdowns to Jalen Hurts. So yeah, tilting, but
it's just the way it goes sometimes.
That's why this game is a son of a bitch. So.
That's right. You think and you don't, even after 1 week.
100%. So, all right. Now we're going to get out of here. We just hit over an hour. We just had to get the quota.
Yeah,
so
we had to.
The show's over an hour.
All right, you push in now.
Yeah. All right. So everybody have a good weekend. Let's win some money this weekend. We'll see you guys back in for week 3. And I'm going to do my best to get D-Bro on next week. See if we can get him on and locked in for week 3. So anyways, have a good weekend. Win some money. We'll see you next week. Bye.